What's going on, everybody? In today's video, we're going to continue on with our tutorial series for the Jericho software. This is going to be part 3, in which we solely focus on the blasting of emails feature that the Jericho software will allow you to have an automated body text with the attached letter of intent to that specified property address. So if you are a wholesaler or an investor, stick around till the end of this video, for this video would be super helpful to you. But if you've just acquired the Jericho software, that this tutorial series is dedicated to you guys. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the blasting of emails feature. And on the master tab, we actually have 2 different ways to send out emails on the Jericho software. We have a single email use availability where you can manually send out an email quickly through Excel to that specified property address with some input variables that are coming from row 2. And then we have a blasting of email feature where you will be able to send out multiple emails to multiple different property addresses with their letter of intent, their LOIs, automatically attached to the email, and that would be done with you super quickly within a couple of seconds. So I think on today's video, we're just going to focus on the blasting of email feature. And the blasting of email feature is going to be from row 19 to row 24. Row 19 through row 24 is going to be for sending out massive amounts of emails using this macro that you see here on your screen. Rows 2 through rows 10 are going to be for this single email use, and that single email use, the macro responsible for that single email usage will be found in the subject to template, the hybrid template, as well as the seller finance template. I will do a separate video for this video series explaining these 2 different macros. There's a macro here for convert text to PDF, and then another macro here for sending out an email. They're both the same for all 3 templates. And this is just going to give you a very quick and efficient way to send out an email immediately to that seller agent with automated embedded information for that property, specifically, whatever that may be. Could be an LOI that's being attached, or perhaps you just want to include a body text. But this is a super efficient way to send out emails. Gmail and Yahoo do have email templates that you can choose back and forth from, but they're not to the same extent to which the Jericho software capabilities are. For example, the major difference here is that I don't have to go searching on my desktop to find the LOI. The LOI is automatically attached to the email. And so this is the LOI. It's not filled out because this is for tutorial purposes only. But when you do the mathematics and you have the LOI attached to your email, it will be done for you. The mathematics will be done for you, and that LOI will be attached to the email with your embedded and automated body text information for that property address and seller agent. So we'll do a separate video series on that. This is just a very quick demonstration of the functionality for manually sending out an email in the sub 2, hybrid, and seller finance templates. In today's video, we're going to solely focus on the blasting an email feature. So what do we need to know for this master tab? So for the master tab and for the blasting of email feature, what you need to first do is be sure to include your name or your office information and your cell phone or office phone number. You're going to input these values into the input cells provided for you. So that would be through columns K and columns L, rows 1 and 2. That's where that information is going to be stored. This information is going to be used for the single email use as well as the blasting of email feature. Now, remember in part 1, we had a file path for all of your saved LOIs. The file path for your saved LOIs is going to be for all your cash and creative finance. So make sure your file path is correct. Go back to part 1 if you did not understand something, but all of your LOIs will be stored here, and you're going to make sure this file path is correct, because when you start blasting out emails through the macro on the Jericho software, it's going to pull every single LOI for that specified property address to the designated email. You don't have to do that manual work yourself. The Jericho software will do that for you. So that's going to be super beneficial when you're trying to send out 100 emails at once. So let's go back here. Row 19 through row 24 is where we're going to focus in on this video today. We have some shared input tabs. Perhaps we'll do that first before we talk about anything else. The shared input tabs for both the single email use as well as the blasting of email feature that's incorporated in the workbook. The shared input tabs would include the EMD of the property, the due diligence of the property, the close of escrow for offer number 1, which is going to be your cash offer, and then close of escrow for offer number 2, which is going to be your creative offer. And so these input variables that you see here highlighted in yellow, these cells here are going to be used for both the single email use as well as the blasting of email feature. So what do I mean by that? I mean that the embedded body text that you see in the email itself is going to include the EMD of $4,000, the due diligence of 7 days, the close of escrow of 30 days for cash offer number 1, and 21 days for close of escrow for creative on offer number 2. And then we can see here that we had our cell and office number as well. So this information is being auto-populated for you, and this information is being incorporated for both the single email use and the blasting of email use. So when you're doing a single email use, which we will do in a separate video, you'll be able to manipulate these variables to however you want for that specified property. But when you're doing a blasting of email, just keep it very basic, keep it very general. I understand that a lot of these MLS agents want to have the EMD of the 1% rule. And let's say you have various properties at different price ranges. A good rule of thumb is to have an EMD of anywhere between $3,000 and $5,000 is a pretty good rule for EMD. So if you're working with a property that, let's say, is $700,000, $800,000, and you have an EMD inputted in this cell for $5,000 when you did the blasting of email and your agent or seller comes back to you saying that's not enough EMD, then you would have a follow-up conversation with them and tell them we're more than happy to increase our EMD. But because we're blasting out emails, these variables here highlighted in column B through row 7 and row 10, these variables are going to be used for all of your blasting email functionality. So you're just going to want to keep it general. It doesn't need to be property specific. If you want to do property specific inputs for the EMD or due diligence period, then you would want to manually send out that email in the Excel template. That would be the easiest way to have full control of that capability. But I think many of you don't need to do that. I think for the blasting of emails, I think this should be more than sufficient. And so what we're going to do now is go back into row 19. In row 19, we can see here that we have a drop-down selection. If you click on column B, row 19, click on this cell, and you'll see the drop-down selection here. And this drop-down selection, how this drop-down selection is working is that it's using what's called a data validation. If you don't know what a data validation is, you can do a quick Google search or you can YouTube it, and it'll show you how to do a data validation. But a data validation basically is saying that I have a cell, and in that cell, I'm going to then select what information I want to auto-populate into that cell, and the information that is presented for you at this moment is a list. And that list is being pulled from row 20 to row 24. Now, what is this list? This list is going to be your body paragraph that would be embedded in each email that you send out on the blasting of emails. So, for example, if we click on the first selection here, which would be row 20 says, quickly following up on our LOI submission. And if we click on the drop down, we can see here that we have clicked on the correct verbiage. And when we click on blast email, the blast email is then going to incorporate the drop-down selection verbiage that you had chosen prior. So I'm going to exit out of this. We don't need that open. Every time you run the emailing blasting macro, it'll tell you whether or not it's completed. In this case, we only did one email that was blasted out. and it'll just give you a message box saying that email campaign is completed. So it's just a super easy way to keep track of where you are in the progress of sending out those emails. But I digress. Let's go back into rows 20 and rows 24. Rows 20, 24 completely, you can completely edit this. So if you don't like the verbiage of any of this, feel free to edit it. To edit it, you just click on column A, row 20, column A, row 21, column A, row 22, and so on. And you would do that up until column A, row 24. And when you click on this cell, for example, if I just put in 123 Main Street, and then I click on the drop-down selection here, you can see that it auto-populated. And so this would be the new selection that I would want to incorporate when I'm sending out an email to a seller. But remember that this body paragraph text is going to be used for all of your emails when sending out an offer to that property. So when you do that, use language that is very general, but not too general. And I'm going to click on the first selection here, and I'm going to click on the blast email one more time. I want you to notice something very important. And what's important here is that because we're going to use general language for that property that we're doing a blasting of email, we need to refer to the property address in the embedded body text. Now, how do we do that? Well, it's already done for you through the BBA macros. If you noticed, it says here 321 Broadway. 321 Broadway is the property address that we're sending an email for, and this is for the blasting of email. So every blasted email will include the property address that you are referring to at the end of the body text. So if I minimize this and we go to row 28, because now we're going to do a live example of what it is that I am referring to. If we start at row 28 and we click blasting of email, I think I have the time delay at 8 seconds. I will fix that. But we can see here that the property address being referred to is always going to be at the last part of your email body text. We're doing that intentionally because not only do we want to have the property address associated in the subject line, but we also want to have the property address embedded in the body text itself. The easiest way to do that is to have that towards the end of the email. So when you are creating verbiage for general use for sending out blasting of emails, you could say something along the lines of what is already shown here on the screen. It says, any update on our offers made regarding 321 Broadway. And so you would orient the verbiage being used for the blasting of emails, knowing that the last couple of words in your email text will include the property address. So that's a benefit to you, and that is also something to keep in mind when you are creating your general body text for the email blasting. Now, here we have agent and seller's name, the email address, their telephone number, property address, and the status. Now, what is all of this? Well, I think the first couple of columns here are pretty straightforward. What I will tell you is that the blasting of email feature only needs 3 inputs. The only 3 inputs needed from the blasting of email feature are the name of the individual, their email address, and the property address. The telephone number is not required. So you can keep the telephone number either stored in this column here, column C of the master tab, or you can keep their telephone number stored in column D from the auto underwriting LOI portion, which we did in part 2 of the video series. Let's go over the status tab as well. In the status tab here, this is going to be a mini CRM, which was created for you. The mini CRM basically has a drop-down list of similar verbiage that you might find on a traditional CRM from one of these major websites. And so what we're trying to do is just keep track of offers that have been made, received, and where they are along the pipeline. And you can edit your status of that property by simply coming to column J. And in column J, you can edit the wording here to whatever verbiage that you want to use as your status update. This functionality is working as a data validation. So if we click on data of your Excel workbook and you click on data validation and you click on data validation one more time, if you click on settings and then on settings, you click on list, and then from list, you click on source. The source you can see here is pulling from row 24 up until row 35 on this particular example, which is provided for you. If you wanted to create your own CRM, you absolutely can. This one's just created for you. And so what the data validation is when you click on this drop-down selection, you're basically saying that I want this particular cell to auto-populate with one of the following available options that are available. In this case, what's available is in column J. So that is what a data validation is. If you want more information on data validation, again, I digressed from that. You can do a quick Google search on that, and it'll do, I'm sure there's many videos out there on what data validation is. It's a very easy way to create a list within a particular cell. So we have data validation for all of the cells here in the status for column E. We have a data validation in column B19. We have a data validation in B6. And we also have another data validation in column I, row 24. The data validation here is a greeting that you would use for blasting out emails depending on the time of day, depending on whether you're sending out an email in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening. You can create a generic greeting for that blasted out email. And then we have two more data validation inputs available for your CC and then for your BCC. And so for the CC data validation, which would also be incorporated for the blasting of emails, as well as the single email use, both CC and BCC, whatever is filled in columns F and G, row 2, will be used for the single email use and the blasting of the email use. And these three lines here highlighted in gray, that's basically going to be stored information where you might say 123@gmail.com is going to be your CC partner. You'll have the data validation drop-down list where now you can select who is going to be CC'd on that email. And so you can see how beneficial and easy that was. We're just indicating, if we wanted to incorporate anybody on the email, we have that ability to do that very quickly and efficiently. If you don't know what a BCC is somebody who would be tagged on the email, but they would be invisible to the receiver of that email that was sent out. So whoever is receiving the email from you, your BCC contact would not be visible in the user's mailbox. They would only see your name as the from address, but they would not see anybody tagged. Your BCC contact person would be invisible in the user's or in the receiver's eyes. They would be invisible. So they would not be able to see who it is that you got tagged. So that's a nice little functionality as well. Now, in terms of blasting out the email, we just talked about what all the basic inputs here are. If we're only going to be talking about the blasting of emails on this particular video, for the single email use functionality, we'll talk about that in further detail when we're doing our video walkthrough of the subject to hybrid and seller finance templates. But for the blasting of email, many of you are going to be using that. And so let's go over here to column G, row 22. Now, column G, row 22, we have an option to either display the email before we send it or to not display the email before sending it. I personally display my emails before sending because I want to verify the text that's in the email and the verbiage used, and I want to make sure that it is correct before I send out that email. When I think everything is correct, then I will have the display email set to false. And I will have that set to false because I don't want to have 20 to 30 emails auto-populate on my screen. That would be very frustrating for the RAM of my computer, and it wouldn't be fun to have to then go and close out every email or have to manually click the send button on 100 separate emails. That would defeat the purpose of having a VBA macro running in the background. So the display email before sending is meant for checking the validity of the email and making sure that everything is according to your particular standards. The attached letter of intent, right now we have it set to false. If I set it to true, and what that's basically going to do is that it's going to attach the LOI that was either manually created from you under manual underwriting. The manual underwriting is done in the cash versus creative tab, which we are going to talk about in the next video. But the manual underwriting would then be saved as a professional LOI using this macro here, convert text to PDF. So that converts text to PDF is available in the sub 2 template, the hybrid template, and the seller finance template. So that conversion is meant for manually saving LOIs. Now, many of you are going to be auto underwriting your LOIs. And so if you're auto underwriting your LOIs, then as seen in part 2 of the video walkthrough, you saw how quick and efficient that was for creating your subject to, your seller finance, and your hybrid LOIs. So that LOI information is already going to be stored for you, and it's going to be saved in the file path destination that you had designated on the master tab. So these are the PDFs that were saved prior from our part 2 in our video series. And so since we're blasting out emails, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete whatever is filled out here. I'm just going to click the delete button on my keyboard. And I'm going to go to our auto underwriting, and I'm going to select anybody's name. It could be 50 people, it could be 100 people. I'm going to select who it is that I want to blast out emails for. And I'm simply going to copy and paste their information into the master tab. And remember, there's only 3 input variables needed to blast out emails: their name, their email address, and the property address. That's all that is required to blast out emails. So we have 4 LOIs that were constructed from our part 2 video. And so we're going to send out 4 emails automatically, probably within like 2 seconds. And if we click on our drop-down selection for the automated body text, we can see here that this one here says we're quickly following up on our LOI submission. So we'll just keep that set as a standard. We're going to change our starting row to row 26. The starting row is telling the macro which row would you like to start sending out emails from. So because we've already had information filled out for Kevin, and Kevin is in row 26, I want the macro to start running in row 26. But I'm not obligated to start running in row 26. I can start running my blasting of email in any particular row. I can start at row 29, for example, which would only mean that there would be 1 email. And before I show you that, I'm going to change the time delay to 3 seconds because I don't want to wait 8 seconds per email. That would be very annoying. So to do that, this is the correct syntax for the time delay in seconds. The time delay in seconds is going to be a time delay between each email that is sent out. So when we're blasting out emails to sellers and to agents, it's very important that you have a time delay between each email because you don't want to be flagged by any type of Gmail or Yahoo provider, AOL providers. Any of the big names always have a time delay incorporated between each email that's sent out. For demonstration purposes, we're keeping this at 3 seconds. Again, this is the correct syntax to use. And we're going to keep the display email to true. We're going to attach the LOI. We're going to start our row at 29. And we can see here that we have an attached LOI. We have our embedded property address, and the embedded property address is coming from column D, row 29, which you can see here on your screen. And so when we start blasting out emails, it's going to always remember and to always pull the property address that you're referring to, and it'll always be towards the end of your email. We're doing that intentionally, like I said before, because we need to have two ways of creating the validity of which property that we are referring to with our offer. Actually, it would be three ways. It would be our subject line, our LOI would have the property address plus the body text. So this is just a more professional way of doing things. And then if we go to our column B, row 7, column B, row 7 says that there is an EMD of $3,000. And so remember what was said prior is that column B7 through B10 is going to have shared input variables for both the single email use plus the blasting of email use. So we can see that this information is being pulled from the following cells highlighted. And then in terms of the blasting of email feature, it's just basically going row for row. So whatever is filled out in row 29, the macro is going to go row per row, and it's going to input that information in the email according to the value inputs that you see in that row. So if I just have a random input variables here, you're going to see how that would affect everything. In fact, it won't even auto-populate because there is no LOI associated for 589. I'm going to set this to false. What I'm basically trying to show you is how this is working. So we can see here that 256 is the agent or email's address. The agent or seller's name is 123. And then we have the property address 589. So we can see where those input variables are being embedded in the email itself. I'm going to now just backspace because I want to keep things nice and clean. But now if we go into row 26, and in row 26, we're going to start blasting out our emails. And I'm just going to make sure that I have these Outlook emails closed before I do so. Remember from part 1 of our video series, there's a new version update for Outlook. Please have it turned off. The new version Outlook does not incorporate the VBA macros well. So it's better to use an older version of Microsoft Outlook. So make sure that you have this functionality turned off. We'll minimize this. We're going to click blast email, and in every 3 seconds, an email is going to populate. So you can see that this feature for the blasting of emails is going to be super helpful, especially when you have to send out hundreds of emails at once. All of the property information, including the LOIs, will be automatically attached to those emails. And for demonstration purposes, I have this set to display the email before sending. But when you are sending out, let's say 10 emails, it's probably advised that 10 emails is where you really want to have a cutoff and say false in that cell. And you're going to write false, and you're going to tell the macro running, do not display the email, just send it. Just send the email and don't display it, because if you display the email before sending, you're going to have a ton of emails that you're going to have to then manually click the send button or to exit out of. And you're just going to cause more stress on the RAM of your computer. So I would avoid that. The display email before sending is intentionally there to give you the option to look over the email before sending. So when you have it set to true, take a look at the email. When you feel confident that the email is according to your standards, then set the display email false. And then what will happen is that the VBA macro will automatically connect with the Gmail, Yahoo, or whatever account provider that you signed into with Microsoft Outlook, and it'll automatically send that email with the email domain that you signed into with Microsoft Outlook. So it won't auto-populate on your screen. It'll automatically get sent. If you want to check to see that an email was sent from Excel, you would simply go to the email provider that you signed into with Microsoft Outlook. In this case, I'm signed into Gmail. And because I'm signed in with Gmail, I would simply just have to click on my send folder. Maybe I can do that right now as a live demonstration. I think I actually have it open. You would go to your send folder for your email provider, and then you can just verify that the email was indeed sent. So that's what you would do in that scenario. And that's simply just for checking. And if you wanted to check manually that the email was sent. But we already know that that's not going to cause any problems. It will get sent out. And if you want to check, that's how you would do it. So I think this concludes everything that you need to know for the blasting of emails. Most of you are going to be using the blasting of emails feature. I think some of you will be using the manual portion here for the email usage. I think you will use this feature, but this will be more for the intent after you have a conversation with an agent or a seller and you need to send an email quickly. This functionality here will allow you to do that. And so we'll do a separate video on that because the single email use is, again, it's going to be tied to rows 2 to rows 10. And then the blasting of email feature is going to be tied to rows 19 through row 24 of this spreadsheet. And I think that's about it. I don't think there's anything else here that needs to be covered. So in part 4, we're going to go over the manual underwriting for the cash versus creative. There's even more information to kind of go over with the Jericho software. You can see just how advanced that this software is. So these tutorial series are dedicated to those who have purchased the Jericho software, those who acquired it. These videos are going to allow you to know all the functionalities of the Jericho software. So I hope this is useful for you. I hope you found this information helpful. And if you have any questions at all, please leave it in the comment section of this video and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for part 4. Part 4 is going to be the cash versus creative finance portion, which is going to be the heart of this calculator. The brains of this calculator is in the master tab, but the heart of this calculator is essentially with the mathematics that are involved. So thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video. Take care.